Hello, beautiful people of Mother Earth. I finally decided to be nice and bring y'all outside. Look where we're at. It's gorgeous. Ooh. Yep. This is where I'm from. I love it. It's the best. I was inspired. I have no idea what I'm really gonna say, but that's the point. I want it to be a free flow. But I was inspired by a fellow I've been following. Well, I mean, he's not really active right now, but he's made a lot of videos in the last 6 years. And the channel is called Master of Earth on YouTube, here on YouTube. And I'm really inspired by this fellow. And I watched his very last video, which was made 2 years ago. And he was speaking to working your energy, using technical ways to work with the energy of your body. And he is in the belief that the consciousness, our consciousness, is not in our brain or even our crown chakra, really, but rather comes from our solar plexus, our belly, and the breath that our belly breathes, and I mean, we're all, in the alchemical term of it, our body is like a single cell organism, and our consciousness is the little nucleus in the middle, and the nucleus is our belly, and our belly breathes. And that kind of makes sense with the whole thinking that we come into this life with an umbilical cord. And when you astral project, which is something I've yet to, really do in a very exercise sense. But you have what is accounted for as a silver cord that connects you back to the physical realm as you travel through the astral realms. And so it kind of makes sense that the belly, and he really goes into talking about the intestines as being really the intelligence, and that, which is interesting because nobody really thinks of the intestines as anything but a very functional, like, waste processor. But he had really compelling arguments, and it wasn't just specifically that, but he was just talking about how to work with the energy of the body, considering the body as, every part of the body as conscious, like my hands, every piece of the body is perfectly designed to carry our consciousness. Therefore, it's the consciousness, the soul and all that doesn't dwell in, in a particular maybe spot. I'm saying this wrong because he did talk about the belly, but really it involves in our entire body. Our physical body isn't this just, it is a vessel, but it doesn't mean that it's just for here and now. It's everything. And that there's a lot of ways that we are ignorant to techniques and ways that we could and should and used to be using our body, our vessel, that would in fact complement and is necessary for full conscious conscious function. Now, when I say conscious, one thing that Master of Earth pointed out, lovely human being, lovely, lovely, lovely human being, giving so much of himself. One thing he pointed out was that the reality is our consciousness is really ego-based. And in fact, so inflated now with the types of programming and the agendas that be on this earth that are prevailing, the powers. Our conscious waking consciousness is really what we would think of as more of the unconscious self. And our subconscious is in actuality the true reality. And this makes sense to me because the subtle senses, you know, basic humans have access to the 5 senses. And this is just so bare-boned basic. And the only reason really that we're limited is that we're not being educated on purpose. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Or even if they do know what they do, they really don't. But we're not being educated about ourselves fully, ourself as an organism on Mama Earth, all of us connected. We're not being educated in that way at all. In fact, the knowledge there has been hidden on purpose. And so really, if you think about it, the most simple way to think about it all is that everybody's got intuition. I mean, I know that everybody can at least acknowledge that. And even if in fact, back in the more misogynistic days, you know, women were, you know, denoted the intuitive, kind of weirdly intuitive people because, you know, we have children and need to be sensitive to children and babies' needs. Now, that to me, maybe, and I added that part, but I'm assuming that people back in the day when men did not want to acknowledge intuition. Again, I'm saying stuff. Don't judge me too much because I'm sure most of it's half right and half wrong. But that part of it had to do with, oh, that's a woman's job to be sensitive in that intuitive way for the child. Now, actually, that's actually very, very wise, because if you think about it, children are almost children, and when I say children, there's a cutoff. There sure is in this day of age, but let's say babies. Babies are subconscious vehicles, almost totally, especially the first year, the first 2 years, and in fact, babies to children up to like 6 or 7 or 8 are in fact very clairvoyant and psychic and have so much access to the subtle realms, the astral realms, to the subconscious, to past lives that they remember, things like that, that it's it's hard to not put 2 and 2 together and realize that we all must have had this access. To touch very, very carefully on a personal story that actually occurred this year. And this year, let me back up. That occurred last year. It's January. It's hard to transition. So in 2018, in August, it actually happened to be on the day of my father's, what would have been his 79th birthday. He died when he was almost 75. So, and he was a very, very like deeply influential person and a force in my life. So he means a lot to me. And so it was very, very beautifully orchestrated that on his birthday in 2018, I had the most profound experience of my life, which was Everything was working out so not right that day, not right at all. And my daughter, my daughter who just turned 7, so she was 6 and 3/4. Well, she and I get along famously. I mean, we were made for each other. She was made to come into my life and sew up some loose ends. And so we just don't have a really difficult time together. But this day, out of all days, it just, nothing was working. And I didn't understand. Even my empathy or sympathies or attention to her was not working. She was behaving very different than she usually ever behaves. And so out of last resort, I ended up, I out of frustration, and I never get too angry with her because I can't. Our relationship is just so good. I just said, all right, well, you know what? Get yourself in the car. I'm taking you for a drive. And she says, where are we going? I said, we're going to Timbuktu. And then that helped her kind of, you know, start asking questions about where that was. And we started driving and she calmed down. And we drove up into the woods. As you can see, there's lots of glorious mountains around here. And there's Pilot Rock. I just revealed. Oops. Anyhow, we drove up into the mountains and drove back down. And as I was coming back down, what happened is my tire didn't catch on fire, but it was smoking, and I thought it was on fire. So I had to pull the car over. There was a little freak out, and then I had to explain to her that we had to wait. There was no cell phone reception, so I couldn't get a hold of anybody to help us out, and I knew that I need to at least let the tire and that cool down, and then we go and, you know, try and stay in the lowest gear possible on the way down. And it was weird because this was a brand new car to me. I just got it 2 weeks before or less. It wasn't brand new, but it was new to me. Just, you know, and I got it from a dealership. So it was weird that things were working out so bizarrely, seemingly against our favor. Well, in the time that it took to wait, my daughter revealed to me spontaneously, had never said anything except one thing when she was quite younger, before she could really even hardly talk. Besides that one thing, which I didn't even put 2 and 2 together till August of last year, that other thing could have had to do with this. She revealed to me some shit that I have just, you know, I've heard of kids who knew about their past lives or knew things and could speak to the other realms, but I never had an experience with a person, a child, let alone a person that had said anything that I'd ever been able to believe. But she said some things that even she took it from the broader spectrum of talking about other countries and pyramids and the Sphinx and different rulers and things like this. And then she took it way personal and even recounted a story that had happened when I was first learning to drive at age 15 with my dad. And the only 2 people who knew this story was me and my father. And she recounted it perfectly and relayed a message. And I just you know, if I needed proof, I hadn't asked for it. And that was so unbelievably heartwarming to me, that a beautiful little soul could remember so much if given the opportunity. And in fact, she was very adamant about this being, to a degree, private. And so I knew that she, in the back of her mind, felt threatened by people knowing that she had this ability. And so that makes me so terribly sad. And since then I've worked with her, and but that she didn't feel comfortable because she felt like it was weird and not normal, maybe. But she knew that to her, it was just, you know, she knew what she knew. In fact, what she was saying, the last thing I'll say about it is that she said she knew how to talk to Mother God and Mother Earth, two separate beings, and also fire spirit and things like that. And so she had the capability of tapping into the elements and to some deity that has something to do with this earth. Well, so consciousness and levels of consciousness, subconsciousness. Children are operating up until they lose their ability only because they're not immersed in it. They're not, their access is cut off only because of how they feel about that in respect to other people not talking about it. And maybe some people say that it's not okay to talk about it, or nobody talks to them about it, so they lose it like a language, you know. Well, the subconscious is the very fine sense in that it governs us so much, in fact, in so many ways. And I'm not saying that I don't feel that the conscious and the ego sense needs to be disregarded. It should not be regarded, but the emphasis that's been put on our egos is quite imbalanced in regard to the emphasis that has been put on our subconscious, kind of higher self, non-egoic. So, fellow says, we need to tap back into this subconscious. How do we do it? He says, well, you need to start realizing that the chakras are real and they're ways to move about energy in our bodies. And they can be blocked. And also, people often pay attention too much to things like I know that I've done this, to the third eye or the crown chakra, feeling like that's the, you know, well, it is, but that's not really what's, I'm going to put a link in the description. The video he made was 3 hours long. If you're diehard, if you are true blue, I advise watching the whole thing. I mean, he gets redundant in his speech, but only if you see it that way, because I see him saying things repetitively to kind of almost cement it into the subconscious, because our conscious brains lose things very fast, you know? And so I see it as quite perfect. But I'll put that in the link, and that'll describe more about that. Now that that's taken up most of my video, I would also like to say that for me, I have been on a spiritual path actively since 2014, when I came back to spirit, because I grew up very religiously, and at 17 I took the fuck off. And that was devastating to me, because I had to deal with some incredibly deeply frightening emotions. In fact, frightening is not quite a good word, but they really stemmed around my fear of eternal life, and that really freaked me out, because in the sector of Christianity that I grew up, there wasn't really a hell, but there was levels. There was the celestial, telestial, and terrestrial, you know, levels. And the way that it was explained to me by my kind of older mother, so not as progressive thinking, much more dogmatic, was that I could get stuck forever and ever and ever in some kind of purgatory-ish thing. And so when I decided to leave the church, I moved. I mean, I was going to college at 17. I moved in with my boyfriend, and I remember sleeping in bed next to him, and I couldn't sleep, because it just kept rolling around my mind, the eternity. And I was trying to fathom what eternity, what unending time could be like, and it just scared the shit out of me. And I just was almost paralyzed with a fear that I've never been able to, that I've never felt since and never felt before. It was the most awkward and unpleasant fear, deeply seated fear. And so working through that all by myself, I had nobody to talk to about that at all. When I finally did, I completely dropped any ounce or drop of spirituality out of my life because it frightened me. But I came back in 2014 and beautifully through the mushroom and a wonderful human being that was my lover for a while, who really just created a wonderful platform for me to just open up spontaneously to it. But you know, with all the work that I'd done since then, it wasn't until 4 years later, this last year, that I really began anything that I would say was close to ascension. In fact, I didn't give it that name. Somebody who is much wiser than I labeled it for me, which has made it a lot easier for me to be going through the process that I'm very much still going through. And it started to happen, and then it escalated in the year, and it too has been a very difficult process. But it is basically, people call it being reborn, or going from one vibration to another. You have to ascend, you have to go up, you have to, climb up. It's hard work. It is like trying to be born, because it's for some people it can be very painful, and it has been for me, and very lonely. I enjoy being alone, so that's one good perk, but I don't enjoy feeling misunderstood, and it's been difficult in that way to be able to explain to anybody besides a select few people. Shout out to you guys. You guys are the bestest. I love you. So it's been hard to explain to anybody why last year looked the way that it did. Most people look at it and be like, you need to get your shit together. What are you doing? And the people that have a little bit more of an understanding, who can cheerlead me and understand that, they're the ones that are like actually helping me stay grounded and not insane. And that is just so beautiful. Isn't it sad that we have a certain type of society where ascension and moving from one conscious level of awareness to another could be so shrouded in mystery and not supported, because it's not scientific, or because it looks messy and you're not put together, and you unravel, and it looks like you're doing the wrong thing. When in fact, if you study any kind of indigenous culture that practiced the art of intentionally ascending for as ritual, the unraveling process, the process of dying, you can see it in animal medicine cards and stuff, the process of dying and going into the death. I can't remember which, I don't know which animal card. I know bat, it has stuff to do with rebirth, but some of them would actually go lay in a grave and die for a little bit. And shamans and people, energy workers of all types, and medicine people have all allowed themselves to die. And really what that would be is allowing a lot of their shell, their ego, to be eaten, to be eaten by the worms of that, in fact, are your regeneration, the worms of reality, subconsciousness. I think this is also why when taking psychedelics, oftentimes it can be a very difficult experience, because you are shown your ego, and if you are repelled by that, which most people are, because it's very obviously unattractive. It is at the base core of reality not a beautiful thing. It's a very awkward and selfish and fake and power hungry and manipulative and dishonest thing if given the chance. The ego will run if given the right pair of shoes. if given like, you know, any of the space, it will run the fuck with whatever it can. But that's its purpose. I mean, that's its purpose. It's our challenge. Our challenge is to meet our ego in a space of acceptance, you know, because the ego wants nothing more than to be loved, really, at the core, to be loved and adored. And if, you know, if anybody can think of the last thing I'll end with is the scenario. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm a mom, and I could tell you what, it's hard to be a mom because the responsibility of loving somebody, go listen to Alan Watts and his lectures on love. The responsibility of loving somebody is so hard. I mean, I automatically love my children, but not all human beings are created equally, and also in different moments, human beings and our actions are created unequally. And I have one child who is very much like me, my eldest, and who pretty much is a mirror image of how I was, and therefore has since birth shown me a reflection of how I was, and I have to deal with that because I know I wasn't that easy when I was little. I mean, I was horrible, but I'm like, oh my God. But it's wonderful, and I love her for that. In fact, I respect her for coming in and for us making whatever pact we did before this life, for her coming in and challenging me like this, because she must have known before this life that it was going to freak me out, and I was going to react to it badly in a lot of ways. Emmy glues her and I together, my eldest, and Emmy's here to do some beautiful mediation work between us as a family. But yeah, but so I lost my train of thought, but I think I was talking about the ego, and it's necessary, but it's necessary. Okay, here it is. Parenting. You know, the more manipulative you are with a kid, you might get your way forever and almost ever. But at one point, a manipulation can backfire at any point. At one point, it can reveal itself as a dishonest act of power and control. If you love your child and you've practiced your own self-love before, done your own self-work and self-love, and you truly want to show your child love and acceptance, force doesn't even come into play, because you don't own your children. You've given them life, now you've got to let them go. You're their stewards, you're their guardians until they're ready to go, but you do not own your children. Your children are separate from you. You guys have interactions, and nor do they own you, you know. But you do have an obligation to them when they're small, sometimes. If you relinquish that obligation, so be it. Then they go on, and that's fine. But if you are there and you're sticking it out, and you're trying to force an agenda on them, it's going to backfire at one point. And that's the same way it is with the ego. If you try and force, if you have an ego and you want to, you want it to shut the fuck up, and stop being so egocentric, you can't fight. I know I've got something there. Sorry. You can't fight fire with fire. You have to do, and it has to come from an authentic heart space, not a manipulative, sneaky, psychological space. But yeah, you kind of do have to do a little reverse psychology with your ego, because your ego is just a little darling, that just like a little child that's how they know how to behave, and they were born to be like that, they were born to express themselves. And the way that you raise your children reflects how they become as adults, and you've got to forgive yourself if you've raised your child in a way that you would love to do over. But the way that you raise them from the beginning really has a lot to do with how they carry on in life. And so therefore, if you accept them, gently steer them toward what is essentially better for them, which is not to be selfish and to be self-centered and to be manipulative toward other children, and to get their way all the time, stuff like that. If you can just show them that what they're doing is totally natural, but that in life, you know, when you do something, it also implies a ripple effect often, and that effect of this behavior will create perhaps a negative back ripple to them. And if you just gently, you know, are able to coax them, they will have not only respect for you, because they will know that you're coming from truth. They can feel that on the subconscious, subtle sense level. They will also be a lot more responsive. It takes more time, perhaps. It sure does. It's easy to lose your fucking shit and get mad at a kid or, you know, back in the way day when people would just beat their kids, you know, it's like, don't do that, you know. I mean, I understand back in pioneer days if children needed to be very much warned about lethal dangers, but for a while when people were just fucking abusive children, you know, it's like, shut the fuck up. Children's not supposed to be heard. No wonder we got so many problems. But we have a chance to reverse it. And if you don't have kids, fuck, there's a lot of kids in this world. Take some time to fucking spend some time with children. It is hard. If you're scared of it, I do not blame you. It is the scariest thing that I've ever encountered or ever done, and it's the last thing I want to do ever, because they scare the shit out of me, because they're so fucking clairvoyant, and because they're hard work, because you can't fucking manipulate them without them causing some immediate like cause and effect, like manifestation right there. Go walk barefoot. Start looking up stuff on the solar plexus chakra. Go hang out with kids. It's good for you. And go check out Master of Earth on YouTube. Guys, thanks for staying with me on this 32-minute video. Much love.